The shaking continued for hours after Gina disappeared into the mine shaft. Taiho, Mina, Hyun, and Do-hyun took shelter in their ship, watching through the viewports as the gray landscape outside was torn by more and more cracks glowing with green light. "We should leave," Taiho said, his hand hovering over the launch controls. "The whole planet might be breaking apart." "No," Mina said firmly. "We need to see what happens. We owe Gina that much." Hyun was monitoring his scanner, his eyes wide with amazement. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever is happening down at the core, it's changing the entire planet." Do-hyun, who had been quiet for a long time, pointed out the viewport. "Look there. And there." They all looked where he was pointing. From the glowing cracks in the ground, tiny green shoots were pushing upward, plants growing at an impossible speed. As they watched, the shoots grew taller, sprouting leaves that unfurled in the thin atmosphere. "That's impossible," Hyun whispered. "Nothing can grow that fast, and nothing should be able to grow at all in this soil. It's dead." "Not anymore," Mina said. A smile spread across her face. "She did it. Gina did it." By the next morning, the shaking had stopped. When they cautiously left the ship, they found themselves in a changed world. The gray wasteland was now covered with a carpet of low-green plants unlike any they had seen before. The plants glowed faintly in the shadows and seemed to pulse with life. Hyun knelt to examine one of the plants. "These aren't like earth plants or even like the native plants that used to grow here. There's something new." He scanned it with his device. "They're converting energy directly from the planet's core, no photosynthesis needed." "The parasite," Mina said. "It's not consuming the core anymore. It's channeling the energy to create life." They spent the day exploring the area around the ship. The new plants were spreading rapidly, and small pools of water had formed where none had existed before, as if being drawn up from deep underground. The air smelled fresh and sweet. That night, they sat around a small fire outside the ship, watching the plants glow more brightly in the darkness. "We should send a message to command," Taiho said. "Tell them to call off the destroyer. The core sickness is being reversed." "Not just reversed," Do-hyun said. "Transformed. This isn't a return to what was before. It's something entirely new." "What about Gina?" Mina asked the question they had all been avoiding. "Is she gone?" Hyun looked at his scanner. "Her human form is gone, yes. But there's something at the core of the planet now that has a similar energy signature to what we saw when she transformed. Not exactly the same, but similar. It's as if her consciousness has merged with the parasite and spread throughout the planet." "So she's still alive in a way?" Mina asked hopefully. "More than alive," Hyun said. "She's everywhere." 3 days later, a small fleet of research vessels arrived from the other planets in the system. Scientists and officials crowded around Taiho's team, demanding explanations for the miracle they were witnessing. From orbit, satellites showed that the transformation was spreading across Harem 7 at an incredible rate. Already more than 20% of the planet's surface was covered with the new plant life. But the biggest surprise came when sensors detected a similar transformation beginning on Harem 6. The second planet to have been infected with the core sickness. Though no one had gone there to set up a device, the same green glow was now visible in the cracks of its surface, and the same new plants were beginning to grow. "It's spreading through the system," Hyun explained to the gathered scientists. "The parasite used to move from planet to planet, consuming their cores. Now it's moving in the same way, but with a different purpose: to create instead of destroy." A month passed. The transformation spread to each planet in the Harem system, one by one. The new ecosystem developed at an incredible speed, with more complex plants appearing, followed by small creatures that seemed part plant and part animal, all glowing with the same gentle green light. Mina spent her days collecting samples and studying the new life forms. She kept a journal of her observations, which she dedicated to Gina. Every night before she slept, she would read the day's entries aloud, as if Gina could somehow hear her. One evening, as she sat alone at the edge of what had once been a dead forest but was now a thriving grove of crystal-like trees, Mina felt a strange presence. The trees around her seemed to glow more brightly, and their branches swayed even though there was no wind. "Gina?" Mina whispered. "Is that you?" There was no answer in words, but a warm feeling washed over her, and she knew somehow that Gina was still there, still aware, still watching over the world she had saved. 6 months later, the 7 planets of the Harem system had become famous throughout the galaxy. Scientists came from every world to study the new ecosystem that had emerged, an ecosystem unlike anything seen before, where plants could grow without sunlight, where water flowed in places that had been desert for centuries, where life thrived in ways that defied all previous understanding. They called it the blooming, and the story of how it began spread far and wide, the story of a woman who could hear what others could not, who dared to touch what others feared, who gave herself to save not just one world, but 7. On the anniversary of Gina's transformation, a ceremony was held at the spot where she had last been seen in human form. Thousands gathered there, including Taiho, Hyun, and Do-hyun. Mina stood before them and spoke of her friend, of her courage and her sacrifice. Gina Park was not just a brilliant scientist, she told the crowd. She was someone who could truly listen, to plants, to planets, and finally to a lonely entity that had known only hunger for millions of years. She taught it a new way to exist, a way based on creation rather than consumption. And in doing so, she became something more than human. As Mina spoke, the plants around them began to glow more, brightly pulsing in a rhythm that matched her words. The crowd fell silent, watching in awe as the light spread through the forest from tree to tree, plant to plant, until the entire landscape was alight. "Some say Gina is gone," Mina continued, "but I don't believe that. I think she's still here, watching over these worlds she helped to transform, not as the woman we knew, but as something new, something that bridges the gap between human and other, between life as we understood it and life as it could be." That night, as the visitors slept in their temporary shelters, a gentle rain fell across Harem 7. It was the first real rain the planet had seen since the core sickness began. The drops glowed faintly green as they fell, as if filled with tiny stars. And in the morning, where each drop had landed, new flowers bloomed, blue and green and gold, their petals shaped like human hands reaching toward the sky. Mina found one, such flower outside her door, and knelt to examine it. As she touched a petal, she felt that same warm presence she had felt in the forest. "I miss you," she whispered. The flower pulsed once with bright light, and though there were no words, Mina understood the message. "I am still here, in every bloom, in every new beginning. Look for me in the light that brings life where once was only death." And she knew that though Gina's human journey had ended, her true journey, as guardian and guide to the transformed worlds, had only just begun. The planets that had been dying now bloomed with a new kind of life. And at the heart of each one, watching over the miracle she had created, was the woman who had dared to touch the core sickness and change it forever. The journey back to the surface was faster than the descent. Gina led the way, moving with a new grace that made climbing seem easy. The green lines under her skin glowed brighter in the darkness of the tunnels, lighting their path. When they emerged from the fissure, the waiting scientists gasped at the sight of Gina. In the few hours since she had touched the sphere, her transformation had advanced. The green lines now covered most of her visible skin, and her eyes glowed constantly. "What happened to her?" June asked, backing away. "She made contact with the source of the core sickness," Taiho said simply. "Now we need to get her to the main base, and then to Harem 7. Dr. Do-hyun Lee was waiting for them when they returned to the research base. The old scientist listened in silence as they explained what they had found. When they finished, he looked at Gina with a mixture of wonder and fear. "You're saying this sickness is actually an ancient entity that feeds on planetary cores?" he asked. "And that you can communicate with it?" "Yes," Gina said. "But communication isn't enough. We need to change it, transform it. And to do that, we need to build a device based on the progenitor technology in the chamber." Do-hyun frowned. What you're describing sounds impossible. How can we possibly understand and adapt technology built by an ancient race millions of years ago? Because I can help you, Gina said. I can see how it works now. Through the parasite, I can access some of the progenitor's knowledge. Over the next week, a strange collaboration took place. Hyun worked with a team of engineers to build a device that combined the most advanced human technology with designs that Gina sketched from her new understanding of progenitor science. Mina monitored Gina's condition, watching with growing concern as the transformation continued. The green lines beneath Gina's skin had begun to branch and connect, forming complex patterns that changed and shifted. Her body temperature remained dangerously high. Most alarming of all, scans showed that her cellular structure was changing, becoming something that was no longer fully human. "How much time do you have?" Mina asked one night as she checked Gina's vital signs. They were alone in the medical bay, away from the curious stares of the other scientists. "Not long," Gina admitted. "A few weeks, maybe less. The parasite doesn't mean to harm me, but its energy is too much for a human body to contain. It's trying to adapt me to survive, but the changes are happening too quickly." Mina blinked back tears. "Why did you do it? Why did you touch that thing when you knew what might happen?" Gina took Mina's hand. Despite the heat radiating from her skin, her touch was gentle. "Because I could hear it, Mina. Not just its hunger, but its loneliness. It's been alone for millions of years, drifting between galaxies, consuming to survive but never connecting. Until now." "But at what cost?" Mina asked. "Your humanity? Your life?" "One life to save 7 worlds," Gina said simply. "That's not a bad trade." Meanwhile, Taiho faced a different challenge. The military command had learned of the discovery and was demanding that the parasite be destroyed, not transformed. They didn't trust Gina's plan and feared the consequences if it failed. "They're sending a destroyer," Taiho told the team during an emergency meeting. "They plan to use a quantum drill to reach the chamber and then detonate a core bomb. They think it will destroy the parasite." "It won't," Gina said firmly. "It will only release it fully. Without the chamber to contain part of its energy, the parasite will spread even faster. It could consume the entire system within days." "Then we need to move now," Hyun said. "The device is ready enough. It won't be perfect, but it should work." The plan was set. While the military destroyer was still 2 days away, they would take a small ship to Harem 7 with the device and Gina. There, they would try to initiate the transformation at the point where the parasite had first entered the system. The journey to Harem 7 was tense. The small research vessel wasn't designed for long trips, and the 5 of them, Gina, Mina, Taeho, Hyun, and Do-hyun, were cramped in the cabin. Through the viewports, they could see the planet growing larger, a dead gray world with no signs of life or movement on its surface. "It was a beautiful world once," Do-hyun said sadly. "I visited it 20 years ago, when the forests still covered the equator. There were flowers there that sang in the wind." "It can be beautiful again," Gina said. Her voice had changed, becoming deeper and with an echo, as if multiple voices spoke at once. "If this works, the transformation won't just stop the sickness, it will reverse it." They landed near the original mining site where the parasite had first been released. The landscape around them was a gray wasteland. No plants, no animals, not even bacteria in the soil. The only color came from Gina herself, who glowed green in the dim light of the distant sun. The device they had built was about the size of a small car, a complex mixture of crystal components from the chamber and human technology. It took all 4 of them to carry it from the ship to the mine entrance. "This is it," Hyun said, checking the coordinates. "This is where they broke through to the deep core and accidentally released the parasite." The mine shaft was still open, a dark mouth. In the gray rock, the team set up the device at the entrance, connecting power sources and activating the crystal components, which began to glow with the same blue light they had seen in the chamber. "Now what?" Taeho asked. "Now I need to connect the parasite to the device," Gina said. "I'll serve as the conduit." "What does that mean exactly?" Mina asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. It means I need to fully merge with the parasite, Gina said. Right now I'm only partially connected to it. To complete the transformation, I need to let it fully into me. But what will happen to you? Mina asked. Gina smiled sadly. I won't be me anymore. Not as you know me. But I won't be gone either. I'll be part of something new. Before anyone could object, Gina stepped forward and placed her hands on the device. The blue light from the crystals mixed with the green glow from her skin, creating a strange, shifting pattern. Step back, she warned them. All of you. Get back to the ship. What happens next could be dangerous. We're not leaving you, Mina insisted. You have to, Gina said. Please, I need to know you're safe. Reluctantly, they retreated to a safe distance, though not all the way to the ship. From there, they watched as Gina knelt beside the device and closed her eyes. The green lines under her skin began to pulse rapidly, growing brighter and brighter. Then she spoke, not in her voice or even in the strange, echoing voice they had heard before, but in a language none of them recognized, fluid and complex, with sounds no human throat should be able to make. The device responded, the blue light pulsing in rhythm with the green glow of Gina's skin. A beam of mixed blue and green light shot from the device into the mine shaft, disappearing into the darkness. Below, for a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then the ground began to shake. Earthquake! Taiho shouted. We need to get back to the ship. But Mina was watching Gina, who remained kneeling by the device, her face peaceful despite the chaos around her. Look at her, Mina said. She's not afraid. As they watched, Gina's form began to change. The green lines grew so bright they overwhelmed her human appearance. Her outline blurred, becoming a humanoid shape made of pure energy. When she opened her eyes, they were no longer eyes at all, but windows into a swirling cosmos of green and blue light. It's working, Hyun said, checking his scanner. The energy signature of the parasite is changing. The transformation has begun. The ground continued to shake, more violently now. Cracks appeared in the gray soil, but instead of darkness, green light spilled from them. The same green that now composed Gina's form, but softer somehow, gentler. And from those cracks, impossibly, tiny shoots began to emerge, the first new life on Harem 7 in years. Gina turned to look at them one last time. She couldn't speak anymore. Not in words they could understand, but her message was clear in the gentle pulse of light that reached out to touch each of them. Goodbye. And thank you. Then she stepped into the mine shaft, trailing light behind her, like a comet, descending toward the core of the dying world. The darkness lasted only a moment. Then the crystal walls of the chamber began to glow again, casting soft blue light over Gina's fallen form. Gina! Mina rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside her friend. She checked for a pulse and found it, strong and steady, but too fast. Taiho kept his weapon ready, pointing it at the dark sphere which now seemed smaller than before. Is she alive? Yes, Mina said, but her skin is hot, like she has a fever. Hyun approached the sphere. Cautiously, his scanner held out in front of him. This thing is giving off less energy now. It's as if some of it went into her. Taiho frowned. What does that mean? I don't know, Hyun admitted. But look at the walls. The crystal walls of the chamber were changing. The patterns that had been shifting randomly now moved with purpose, forming shapes and symbols that looked like writing. It's responding to us, Mina said. Or to her. She looked down at Gina's face, which was now covered with a sheen of sweat. Green lines had appeared under her skin, faint but visible like veins filled with light. Hyun walked slowly around the chamber, studying the symbols that appeared on the walls. These look like a language, an old one. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a universal translator that had been programmed with every known language in the galaxy. He held it up to the wall, letting it scan the symbols. After a minute, the device beeped. Partial translation available, it announced in a flat voice. Language matches partial records of progenitor dialect. Progenitor? Taiho asked. As in, the first ones? The race that supposedly seeded life throughout the galaxy? That's just a myth, Mina said, still kneeling beside Gina. Maybe not, Hyun replied. He tapped the translator. Read translation. The device began to speak in the same flat voice. Warning. Containment facility. Dangerous entity within. Parasite that feeds on planetary cores. Destroyer of worlds. Sealed here after the destruction of 7 systems. They all looked at the dark sphere with new fear. A parasite that feeds on planetary cores. Hyun repeated slowly. That matches what we've been seeing. The sickness starting at the core and spreading outward. But why is it only happening now? Mina asked. If this thing was sealed away, what set it free? Before anyone could answer, Gina stirred. Her eyes opened, but they were not her own. The whites were now black, and her iris and pupil glowed. Green. The mining, she said, her voice echoing strangely. The deep core mining on Harem 7 broke the seal. It had been contained for millions of years, but you, humans, you dug too deep. Mina drew back, startled. Gina, is that you? Gina sat up, moving in a way that seemed not quite human. Too fluid, too smooth. I am still Gina, but I am also more now. She looked at her hands, which were lined with the same green light that ran through her eyes. I can hear it. I can feel what it feels. What is it? Taiho asked, his weapon still raised. What is this parasite? It's old, Gina said. Older than any life in this galaxy. It comes from the space between galaxies where energy is scarce. It survives by finding worlds with active cores and feeding on them. She looked at the sphere. It doesn't think like we do. It doesn't understand that what it does causes harm. It only knows hunger. Like a virus, Hyun suggested. Not evil, just doing what it evolved to do. Yes, Gina agreed, but more complex than a virus. It learns. It adapts. She stood up, moving toward the sphere. And now, it's learning, through me. Taeho stepped between Gina and the sphere. That's close enough. How do we know you're still you? How do we know this thing hasn't taken over your mind? Gina smiled, a familiar expression that was reassuring despite her strange eyes. Because I'm still protecting life, Taeho. That hasn't changed. What's changed is that now I can communicate. With the parasite, I can teach it. Teach it what? Mina asked. To feed without killing, Gina said. To take only what it needs. Not everything. To live in balance with its host worlds, not destroy them. Hyun had moved back to the wall, studying more of the symbols that had appeared. According to this, the progenitors tried to destroy the parasite but couldn't. It was too powerful, too adaptable, so they trapped it instead. But they also left a prophecy, Gina said, turning to look at the wall. They predicted that someone would come who could touch the parasite without dying, who could bear it within and change it. And they meant you? Taiho asked, skeptical. I don't know, Gina admitted, but I touched it, and I'm still alive. And I can feel its thoughts, its hunger. Maybe I can change it. For the next several hours, they remained in the chamber while Gina communicated with the parasite in ways they couldn't understand. Sometimes she would stand perfectly still, her eyes closed, her face peaceful. Other times she would walk around the chamber, touching the crystal walls and watching as new patterns formed under her fingers. Meanwhile, Hyun worked with the translator, trying to learn more about the parasite and the progenitors who had trapped it. Taiho set up a secure communication link with the surface, reporting what they had found, but demanding that no one else come down until they understood the situation better. Mina monitored Gina's vital signs, growing increasingly concerned. Your body temperature is rising, she told her friend. And these green lines under your skin are spreading. Whatever connection you have with this parasite, it's changing you physically. I know, Gina said. I can feel it. The parasite exists, partly in our dimension and partly in another. To connect with it fully, my body has to change. But will it kill you? Mina asked directly. Gina was silent for a long moment. Eventually, yes. This body wasn't designed to channel this kind of energy. But I have time. Enough time to teach the parasite another way to live. Mina shook her head. No. There has to be another solution. We can bring more scientists down here, study this thing properly. There's no time, Gina interrupted. The parasite has already spread through most of this system. If we don't act now, all 7 planets will die completely, and then it will move on to another system and another. Before Mina could argue further, Hyun called them over to see what he had found. Look at this, he said, pointing to a section of the wall where the symbols were clearer than elsewhere. The progenitors didn't just build this chamber to contain the parasite, they built it to transform it. Transform it how? Taiho asked. The chamber is a kind of converter, Hyun explained. It was designed to change the parasite's energy signature, to alter its fundamental nature. But the progenitors couldn't make it work because they couldn't communicate with the parasite. They couldn't persuade it to accept the change. They all looked at Gina. But you can, Mina said softly. That's why you can hear it, feel what it feels. You're the missing piece they needed. Gina nodded. I think so. But the chamber is damaged. Look, she pointed to a section of the wall where the crystal was cracked and dark. When the mining operation broke the seal, it also damaged the transformation mechanism. We need to repair it. Hyun studied the damaged section. I might be able to adapt our technology to work with this. The principles seem similar to our quantum field generators, just much more advanced. How long would that take? Taeho asked. Days, maybe weeks, Hyun admitted. And that's if I can understand the system well enough. Gina shook her head. We don't have weeks, we barely have days. She looked at her hands, where the green lines were now branching up her arms. I'm changing faster than I expected. Soon I won't be human enough to help you. What are you saying? Mina asked, her voice breaking. I need to go to Harem 7, Gina said. That's where the parasite first entered this system. That's where its connection is strongest. If we can adapt the technology from this chamber and take it there, we might be able to transform the parasite at its point of origin. That's incredibly dangerous, Taiho objected. Harem 7 is almost completely dead. The core sickness has spread throughout the entire planet. Exactly, Gina said, which makes it the perfect place to begin the change. She walked back to the dark sphere and placed her hand against its surface. This time there was no flash of light, no dramatic reaction. The sphere simply rippled like water, and some of its substance seemed to flow into Gina's hand, making the green lines under her skin glow brighter. It agrees, she said, turning back to them. It's curious. It wants to understand what I'm offering it. And what exactly is that? Taiho asked. Gina smiled, her strange eyes gleaming. A new way to live. A way to feed without killing. A symbiotic relationship with planets instead of a parasitic one. She looked at each of them in turn, but I'll need your help. She's gone. Mina's voice shook as she held up the note she had found on Gina's desk. She went to the fissure. Alone. Taiho Kim read the note, his face hardening. I know where the sickness begins. I have to see for myself. He crumpled the paper in his fist. What was she thinking? She was thinking that no one was listening to her, Mina said, and she was right. 3 hours later, a search party stood at the edge of the great crack in the earth. The fissure was nearly 2 miles, long and so deep that their lights could not reach the bottom. Cold air rose from its depths, bringing with it a strange smell, like metal and something sweet. This is madness, said June, the thin scientist who had dismissed Gina's theories. No one could survive down there. Gina could, Mina said firmly. She knows what she's doing. Taiho checked his equipment one last time. He had brought climbing gear, lights, and weapons. Next to him, Hyun Baek adjusted the straps of his backpack. The young geologist had insisted on coming, saying that his knowledge of rock formations might help them navigate. We go down in teams of 3, Taiho told the group. Mina, Hyun, you're with me. The rest of you wait here and keep in radio contact. If we don't come back in 24 hours, seal the fissure and report to command. Seal it? But what about you? What about Gina? Asked one of the other scientists. If we don't come back, it means there's something down there that shouldn't reach the surface, Taiho said. His hand rested on his weapon. Those are my orders. The descent began slowly. The walls of the fissure were rough, making climbing difficult, but not impossible. For the first hour they saw nothing unusual, just rock and more rock. Their helmet lights cast long shadows that danced as they moved. Look at the rock formations, Hyun said after they had descended about half a mile. They're not natural. Mina and Taiho paused to look where Hyun was pointing. The walls were no longer rough. Instead, they were smooth and lined with thin veins, of a crystal-like substance that seemed to catch and hold their light. What is that? Mina asked, reaching out to touch one of the veins. Don't, Taiho said sharply. We don't know what it is. But Hyun had already broken off a small piece and was examining it. It's not like any mineral I've seen before. It almost looks alive. As they descended deeper, the veins grew thicker and more numerous. Soon the walls were covered with them, glowing with a faint light of their own, a soft blue that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. Our equipment is working better down here, Mina said, checking her scanner. That doesn't make sense. We should be losing signal, not gaining it. Nothing about this makes sense, Taiho muttered. Another hour passed. The fissure widened into a large cave and the floor leveled out. The crystal veins had formed into structures that rose from the ground like trees, branching out to form a glowing forest. The air was warmer here and easier to breathe. Look, Hyun said, pointing ahead. Footprints. Sure enough, a single set of small footprints led through the crystal forest. Gina had been this way and not long ago. They followed the footprints through the strange forest. The crystal trees grew taller and more complex as they walked. Some of them were shaped like no plant they had ever seen, with spiraling branches and what looked like flowers made of light. It's beautiful, Mina whispered. But what is it? Some kind of underground ecosystem? Hyun suggested. But how could it survive without sunlight? Maybe it doesn't need sunlight, Taiho said. Maybe it feeds on something else. The footprints led them to the mouth of a tunnel. Unlike the natural fissure above, this was clearly built. A perfect circle cut into the rock, lined with the same crystal material. The walls of the tunnel pulsed with light, creating a path deeper into the planet. Gina went in there? Mina asked, her voice small. Taiho checked his weapon again. Stay behind me. The tunnel sloped gently downward. As they walked, they noticed something strange. The farther they went, the stronger their equipment signals became. Mina's scanner showed readings that were off the charts. I'm picking up energy signatures that are beyond anything we've measured before, she said. And look at this. Biological readings too. Something big is alive down here. After walking, for what felt like hours, they came to a junction where the tunnel split into 3 paths. Taiho shone his light down each one, looking for footprints. Here, he said, pointing to the right tunnel. She went this way. The right tunnel was different from the others. The crystal formations were darker here, with veins of green running through them. The pulsing light was faster, almost frantic. Don't like this, Hyun said. The geological readings are all wrong. According to my data, we should be nearing the planet's outer core, but that's impossible. We haven't gone nearly deep enough. Unless the core has risen, Mina said. Unless something has pushed it up. They fell silent at that thought. The tunnel ended abruptly at a large round door made entirely of the crystal material. There were no handles, no visible way to open it. But as they approached, the door began to glow brighter, responding to their presence. Gina must have gone through, Mina said. But how did she open it? Before anyone could answer, the door slid open silently, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The light that poured out was blinding after the dim tunnel, forcing them to shield their eyes. When they could see again, they gasped. The chamber was enormous, bigger than the entire research base on the surface. The walls, floor, and ceiling were made of the crystal material, but shaped into complex geometric patterns that shifted and changed as they watched. In the center of the chamber was a structure like nothing they had ever seen, a massive sphere of darkness shot through with veins of sickly green light, suspended in the air without any visible support. It pulsed and shifted, sometimes growing smaller, sometimes larger. And there, standing before the sphere with her hands outstretched toward it, was Gina. "Gina!" Mina called out, starting forward. Tahoe grabbed her arm. "Wait. Something's not right." Gina didn't turn or respond to Mina's call. She stood perfectly still, her back to them, her hands just inches from the surface of the dark sphere. Hyun had pulled out his scanner and was taking readings. "That sphere, it's giving off the same energy signature as the core sickness, but much stronger, much more concentrated." Slowly, carefully, they approached Gina. As they got closer, they could see that her hands were glowing with the same green light that ran through the sphere. "Gina?" Mina said softly when they were just a few feet away. "Can you hear me?" Gina turned then, and they stepped back in shock. Her eyes were open but unseeing, glowing with the same green light. When she spoke, her voice was strange, as if many voices were speaking at once. "I found it," she said. "The source of the sickness. It's not a disease, it's not a natural process, it's alive." She turned back to the sphere, raising her hands higher. "And it's afraid." Before they could stop her, Gina pressed her hands against the surface of the sphere. The green light flared, running up her arms like veins under her skin. Her back arched, and she cried out, not in pain, but in something like wonder. Then she collapsed to the ground, and the chamber plunged into darkness. The 7 planets of the Harem system were dying. What had once been green worlds full of life were now turning gray and empty. Trees fell, rivers dried up, animals disappeared. The people who had built homes on these planets packed their belongings and left, one family after another. Gina Park stood at the edge of a dead forest, her eyes fixed on the brown leaves that covered the ground. She was small, with short black hair that never seemed to stay in place. Her hands were calloused from years of field work, and her skin was tanned from countless hours under alien suns. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered to the dead trees. "The pain, the sickness." The wind carried her words away. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. The silence was complete. Behind her, the research base hummed with activity. 50 of the best scientists from across the galaxy had gathered here on Harem 3, the 3rd planet in the system. They had come to study what they called the core sickness, a strange illness that seemed to start deep inside each planet and spread outward, killing everything in its path. Gina was different from the other scientists. She did not spend her days looking at computer screens or running tests in the lab. Instead, she walked the dying lands and listened. She had always been able to sense things about plants and animals that others could not. As a child growing up on Earth, she had known when trees were thirsty or when flowers were happy. Her parents had called it imagination. Her teachers had called it daydreaming. But Gina knew it was real. Now, at 32 years old, she was one of the top xenobiologists in the galaxy. People respected her work even if they did not understand her methods. "Park, there you are." The voice belonged to Commander Taeho Kim, head of security for the research mission. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that rarely smiled. "The meeting started 10 minutes ago. Dr. Lee is waiting." Gina sighed and turned away from the dead forest. "I'm coming." She followed Taeho back to the base, a collection of white domes connected by covered walkways. Inside the main dome, 20 scientists sat around a large table. At the head of the table was Dr. Do-hyun Lee, chief scientist for the mission. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent his life studying planetary geology. "Nice of you to join us, Dr. Park," Do-hyun said as Gina took her seat. "We were just discussing the latest core samples." Hyun Baek, the team's geologist, stood up. He was young and eager, fresh from university. "The sickness is spreading faster than we thought," he said, pointing to a holographic map of Harem 3. The outer core is now completely infected. At this rate, the planet will be completely dead within 6 months. Worried voices filled the room. Someone asked about evacuation plans. Someone else wondered if the sickness could spread to other star systems. Gina stayed quiet, watching the red area on the map grow as Hyun ran a simulation of the sickness spreading. The red looked wrong to her. It should have been green. No, not green. Something else, something she could not quite see. Dr. Park? Do-hyun was looking at her. You've been out in the field more than anyone. What have you observed? All eyes turned to Gina. She took a deep breath. The planets are not dying, she said. They're screaming. The room fell silent. Do-hyun frowned. What do you mean by that? I mean exactly what I said, Gina replied. This isn't a natural process. It's not a disease that spreads randomly. It's like the planets are in pain. They're trying to tell us something. Mina Kwan, Gina's research partner and closest friend on the mission, gave her a small nod of encouragement. Mina was one of the few who didn't think Gina was crazy when she talked about feeling the planet's pain. That's hardly scientific, Dr. Park, said one of the other scientists, a thin man named June who specialized in atmospheric studies. We need facts, not feelings. Gina looked him in the eye. Facts. Here's a fact. None of your instruments can explain why the core sickness jumps from planet to planet without any physical connection. Here's another fact. The patterns of decay don't match any known disease or geological process. So what are you suggesting? Tai-ho asked. Unlike the others, he seemed genuinely interested in her answer. I'm suggesting we listen, Gina said. Really listen. Not just with our equipment, but with everything we have. There's a pattern here that we're missing because we're looking in the wrong places. Do-hyun sighed. Dr. Park, we appreciate your unique perspective, but we need concrete solutions. Commander Kim, please update us on the evacuation plans for the remaining colonists. The meeting moved on. Plans were made. Tasks were assigned. Through it all, Gina stayed quiet, her mind far away, listening to something only she could hear. After the meeting, Mina caught up with Gina in the corridor. Hey, Mina said, falling into step beside her. You okay? Gina nodded. They think I'm crazy. They think you're brilliant but a little strange, Mina corrected her with a small smile. There's a difference. They walked together to the lab they shared. Inside, plants from across the harem system were arranged in rows, each one in a different stage of decay. Gina moved among them, touching leaves and stems, her eyes half closed. The pattern is getting clearer, she said. It's not random, it's like it's searching for something. Mina looked up from her computer. Searching? You mean the sickness is conscious? Not conscious exactly, Gina said. More like instinctive. Like a plant growing toward light. She stopped in front of a dying shrub from Harem 7, the first planet in the system to show signs of the sickness. Its leaves were brown and curled, but new buds had appeared on one branch, a strange occurrence in a dying plant. See this? Gina pointed to the buds. This shouldn't be happening. The plant is dying, but it's also trying to grow. Mina came over to look. That is strange. Maybe it's a last attempt to reproduce before death? Maybe, Gina said. Or maybe... She didn't finish her sentence. A new thought had entered her mind, so strange and sudden that it took her breath away. That night, Gina couldn't sleep. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling of her quarters, listening to the hum of the base's systems. The thought that had come to her in the lab kept spinning in her mind, growing bigger and clearer. At 3 a.m, she got up, dressed, and packed a small bag with food, water, and basic tools. She wrote a note and left it on her desk. I know where the sickness begins. I have to see for myself. Then she slipped out of the base and headed toward the great fissure that had opened up in the planet's crust 2 months earlier. The scientists had been monitoring it but had found nothing unusual except its size and the speed with which it had formed. Gina knew better. She could feel it calling to her, a pull from deep within the planet that had grown stronger every day. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Gina stood at the edge of the massive crack in the earth and looked down into the darkness. "Can hear you," she whispered. "I'm coming to find you." And with those words, she began her descent into the heart of the dying world.